realtors, nothing's really changed since last time I talked to you. We're still facing a hot market, which means today's topic is presenting multiple offers. Here's what you need to know. So presenting multiple offers. We're hearing right now that it's not uncommon in many markets across the state for there to be several offers on a single property, and sometimes it can happen quickly. Sometimes it happens within 24 hours. And what we're hearing is all sorts of different ways these offers are being presented and handled. So let's talk about what the varying license law is and what the Code of Ethics says about presenting all offers. Iowa Administrative Code, and I need to read this, Iowa Administrative Code 193E 7.15 is titled Presenting Purchase Agreements. And it says, all written offers to purchase received by a listing broker or listing agent shall be promptly presented to the seller for formal acceptance or rejection. It then goes on to say that the formal acceptance or rejection of the offer shall be promptly communicated to the prospective buyers. Finally, it says unless there is a written agreement between the seller and the listing broker directing otherwise, the listing broker shall be required to present backup offers until the transaction has closed. And then if you go on in the license law in 193E, you get into the agency duties. It says your duties to a seller. One of those duties in 193E 12.32 says you have a duty that is presenting all written offers to and from the seller or landlord in a timely manner, regardless of whether the property is subject to a contract for sale or lease or a letter of intent to lease, unless it is provided for in the brokerage agreement. And then agency duties to a buyer. It says you have a duty to be presenting all written offers to and from the client in a timely manner, regardless of whether the client is already a party to a contract to purchase property or is already a party to a contract or letter of intent to lease. Again, that's what the license law says about presenting offers. What you hear in that language that I just said is very clear. You have to present every single offer, all offers, right? And it doesn't really have any exceptions there. When you get into the Realtor Code of Ethics and Standard of Practice 1-6, it says that realtors shall submit offers and counter offers objectively and as quickly as possible. So what does this mean? Well, there's some best practices that you can take away from this. The best practice, of course, is do what this says. Make sure you are presenting all offers. It is up to your client which offer they are going to accept, reject, whether they're going to counter. It's their decision. You don't need to be cherry picking offers and trying to determine, I think they'll like this one, I think they'll like that one. You need to make sure that you're presenting those offers to your clients in a prompt manner and making sure you're explaining to them the process. You can give them some advice, but at the same time, the ultimate authority of whether to accept or reject is up to them. Be careful. Make sure you're presenting them objectively. If you're putting different things in a spreadsheet for convenience or something like that, it can be very easy to become unobjective. And the license law doesn't say you can present all offers or what you think needs to be presented in a spreadsheet. It says all offers. So at some point, they need to see that offer. They need to understand it. Leave that decision to them. Have conversations at the front end of the transaction with the seller, how you're going to handle these multiple offers when they come in. What are you going to do? How are you going to review them? How are you going to respond to them? Notify the buyer's agents when you're going to respond, when they can expect a response. Doing all these things is going to help avoid issues down the road, because lack of communication in this hot market, from what I am seeing, lack of communications and breakdowns in communications is what is driving a lot of complaints that we're seeing. It's what's driving a lot of frustrated clients that we're seeing. So again, communicating these things thoroughly can make all the difference. Of course, if you remember, you might be thinking from our last buyer love letter video, we talked about certain situations where you might agree on the front end of the transaction in writing with your seller not to present a buyer love letter because they don't want to violate the law. Again, that's a little bit different scenario than what we're talking about. But what you need to understand is it's not for you to decide which offer is going to be presented. It's for your seller to decide. So have that conversations, get authorization from them, and understand what the license law and code of ethics says. Finally, if you're going to be in the MLS dictating how multiple offers are going to be handled, how they're going to be reviewed. The last thing that you want to do is then all of a sudden tell people that your seller is going to make a decision at 3 o'clock on Friday and all of a sudden accept an offer at 2 o'clock on Thursday. You know, if you're going to be putting something like that in the MLS, make sure you're having conversations with your clients, that they're going to stick to that, that it's important that you're being honest with everybody, giving everybody a fair shot, and make sure your client understands those obligations that you have, and just do the right thing. I hope this helps, and if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to the legal hotline.